Remember me? Seth. Thank you, buddy. It's good to be back. Just waiting on our guest for a minute. Aaron, thank you, big shot. Aaron, you let whichever Jessica this is know, we'll see if we can make that one happen. Sarah will get to some of those more general questions soon enough. There he is. Okay. Lawrence, the conversation for another time. There he is.
Hey.
How's it going?
How you doing, Matt?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. This is, I don't know if you know this, but this is the big return evening. I had taken about a month off from this. So this is the big comeback special.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for having me for the comeback special. I'm glad I could kind of help that out.
I love it. No, your role is critical. Couldn't think of anyone better to be, the catalyst for the return of BNN. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I see you got a lot of friends on there already waiting on you, so they were missing you.
Yeah. There's not many social activities, in the current environment, right? So I'd like to believe that my comment section gives people a little bit of a social outlet. I mean, these animals, I can't even imagine what they'd be getting into if they didn't have the outlet of this comment section. Be scared.
They need you. They need you.
They need us. They need us. All right. So, Deputy Owens, I'll let you get into your background in just a moment, but you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, essentially born and raised, and you live, breathe, and sleep the city of Compton, a city that, given its affiliation with the group that brought what's known as gangster rap to the masses, NWA, became a very well-known city, and one that was associated with a lot of the gang, a lot of the gang issues, a lot of the social strife of the 80s and 90s, and became maybe more well-known than you may have imagined growing up. And so you decided to go straight into law enforcement, into a leadership position in the community. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what kind of sparked you to make that decision with your life, and then tell us about your career trajectory, and also your participation in a residential capacity as a leader with your church and with the Compton Initiative.
All right. I was born and raised in Compton, grew up on Piru Street, which is the Blood Gang. My brother actually was one of the founders of the Blood Gang, Vincent Owens. And so he goes to jail. He does they try to rob a liquor store. He goes to jail for murder when I was about 8 years old. And my mother was like, I'm not losing any more sons. So my oldest brother passed away from leukemia. And then now her second son is in jail for murder. And I'm her only baby boy now. And so the only thing she knew how to do was take me to church. So as I tell everybody, I became a drug baby because she drugged me to youth group. She drugged me to Sunday school. She drugged me to service every week. So I became that drug baby. And that was my foundation for that. Everything was still going on in Compton on Piru Street. The guys, though, that I was growing up with and hanging out with, man, were we actually all lived on the same street. There was about 25 young men that were just growing up. Most of us had fathers in the home, and we just grew up on the street.
It's just real quick, if you could tell everyone, because Piru, I'm familiar with it, but it's a key street in the lore of the Blood Crips rivalry and the Crips in particular.
Yes, so absolutely. Piru Street is the street that started the Blood Gang.
Sorry, the Blood. My apologies.
Yes, so it was the street that started the Blood Gang, and in 1970, he and a group of young men on the street started that gang, and it has grown to where it is right now. And getting back to the story, man, my mom was just making sure that I stayed away. And so she kept me involved in sports and kept me involved in church. And that's kind of what took place. Sent me to Bourbon Day instead of Centennial High School because all of my brothers and sisters went to Centennial High School and they got in trouble. She was at a parent conference for just about all of them. And so I went to Bourbon Day High School right down the street in Watts, all boys school, specializing in just raising young men in the Catholic way and teaching them how to become men. And so from there, I went to UCLA for a couple of years and had no discipline, got kicked out of UCLA for partying. Hey, I was partying.
A worthy cause.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would take that. Yeah, some of those parties I was in, I would take that. And so with that, I started working at Burger King on El Segundo and Avalon, right around the corner from where I live, Piru Street. And that's where I met my wife. I met my wife there. She was working on the front line and asked her if she wanted to go out on a date, and the rest was history. But what took place was that in that, the sheriff department would always come by. The sheriff department would always come by, and we would give them free food because we wanted their presence. And so we would feed them as long as they would kind of eat in the parking lot and hang out a little bit. And that's where I began actually the steps to take on the career for law enforcement. In talking to this white deputy, we just began to be friends. He would come in once a week. His wife would only let him eat fast food once a week. He would come in twice a week and ask me not to tell his wife. I didn't know her, but he would ask, right? Because he's cheating. And we began to engage in conversation. I'm like, and this is like my first time really engaging with a white male, right? Born and raised in Compton. Yeah, at UCLA, it was all kids my age, and we hung out well, but this was a white male authority figure, a police officer. Mind you, police would come on our street all the time and scare us and, arrest our brothers and things of that nature. So this was really, really funny. In talking to him, he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a deputy sheriff?" And I'm like, "No way. I live on Piru Street. We don't even like the police," right? And he goes, "Well, I made, I think it was like $50,000 last year, and that was in 1984." And I was like, "Where do I sign up?"
Yeah.
And so, and I signed up. I went and signed up. And so for me, it was not a desire to be the police. It was like I wanted a better way out. I wanted a better life. And so this was something that I could do. It was athletic. It was common sense. And you had to have a heart and good moral character. And so I signed up, and the rest is kind of how my path kind of followed. So in doing that, the church was still a major part of my life. Mm-hmm. I felt the calling of the Lord, and in that calling, I began to preach and teach in the church that I was attending, and also going through the sheriff department. And I went through the jails in the sheriff department, and then I came out to training. And on training, that's where you go from the jails into patrol, out on the streets in a patrol car. And in my training, I never forget this. One of the guys and myself were chasing a crack addict. He's a cocaine addict, and he stole a VCR. For those of you that are young, you have to look VCR up. So he has this VCR, and he jumps two fences, and we jump over and we catch him right with the VCR. We high five each other. And this guy, not a Christian at all, just a good guy, white guy. And he goes, "Owens, this guy doesn't need to go to jail. This guy is a drug addict. But look," and this is what he says, "none of the churches around here are open. And so we have no choice but to take him to jail." Right. And I said to myself, man, if I ever get in a position to pastor or to lead, I will make sure that I connect with the community. And so that's kind of how everything took off from there. It kind of just took off, and going to working Linux. That's where the Rodney King riots took place, which kind of scared me to death. And I was out there. I actually lived in the riot area. And they destroyed the market. My own people destroyed the market, and we had 2 babies then, and so my wife had to go 7 miles away to get milk and Pampers and all of those things. So what we see now, I was reliving, and so it was kind of very difficult for me because the other cities didn't want to let anybody else in for fear that they were going to loot and rob them. And so my wife had difficulty actually purchasing and getting milk and diapers for our kids during the Rodney King riot.
Yeah, incredibly difficult scenario. And you've seen it. There's been a pretty amazing, hey, if there's any territory that can be a kind of the case study for seeing the trajectory of law enforcement, inner city culture over the past 25, 30 years, it's got to be Compton. Because, I mean, once again, if we're going to look at, hey, we're going to get into a lot of the reasons for some of the tension between the African-American community and law enforcement, but it would be pretty hard at this point to objectively look at the trajectory of Compton over the last 20 years and not see some pretty stellar demonstrable improvement in terms of, community beautification, which is something that you're very involved in. Correct me if I'm wrong. Would seem to be reduction in crime, generally better relations between law enforcement and the community, and it would seem to be in this category somewhat of a success story.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way, and yeah. It was directly just first of all, the guys and girls out there that are taking people to jail, getting the bad guys off the street, are to be commended. And then the sheriff department committed the community relations team, where they committed 4 deputies to each area. So the city is broken up into 4 districts, and they put a deputy in each of those districts to kind of be like the town sheriff, to meet with all the school principals, to develop block clubs, and to talk to the people and connect with the people in the city, and to develop that rapport and a friendship. So it wasn't more like we're the police and you're the citizens, but it was more like a team. And so it was a lot of work in doing that. A lot of times there was some setbacks, and we've had a number of setbacks in doing that, but overall we have a pretty good relationship with the community that kind of gives us make us smile and kind of pat ourselves on the back, knowing that we still have a long way to go.
For sure. You had mentioned the block clubs, and that's something that you mentioned in your books. Maybe you could, this would seem to be one, policy-wise or tactically, something in terms of a key tactic in community relations, and something that's been very beneficial in your line of work into the community as well.
Yeah, so block clubs are very important. And if anyone out there listening, I recommend you get a block club. Call your local station and say tell them you're interested in starting a block club, a neighborhood watch. And basically what that is that the neighbors in the community on your street will sit up and meet maybe once a week, once a month, and they'll talk about the issues and the problems of crime or whatever else is going on the street. And that block club actually can call out the city council member, the mayor, and the local law enforcement. And so because it was my area, we would attend those block club meetings and we would work together to find solutions. So 2 things happen. Number one, it's a non-threatening event. I'm not jumping out the car to write a ticket. Yeah. I'm not going to their home to stop them, but we are looking at each other in an equal, as equals, right? We both have a vested interest in making your street great and making your street good. And so in that, we developed a lot of friends, a lot of camaraderie, and we built a lot of relationships. And so what that does is it allows us to talk to people, and you can get fed too. People make great food when you make them your friends, and so they'll invite you by for a cup of coffee, a slice of pound cake, and it's a great way of just connecting with the community, but also putting the community at ease and saying, hey, this is who we are. In that, they often introduce their children, their young men, 16, 14, 13, 18 years of age, to me. Right? This is so-and-so. If you see him doing anything wrong, bring him back to me, and I'm going to whoop his behind. Right? And so you hear mothers and big mama and grandmothers saying that kind of stuff. And so, and it has happened. Right? The kid does something bad. Oh, you Miss Jones' grandson. Please take me to jail. Don't take me back to my grandmother. Right? And so in that, though, there's a bond, right? Because now this child doesn't have to get put in the system, right? And the grandmother is appreciative of that. But also the grandmother wants to know, if the police brought you, you were doing something wrong, so I am going to punish you. So it's a great way of building connection in the community, a great way of knowing your local law enforcement agency and getting to know. And it's really important for us to know each other and know each other by name.
Yeah, and you make such an amazing point about, allowing law enforcement in the community to get exposure and communication time together in a non-threatening way, outside the confines of outside the confines of, okay, someone, there's a perpetrator, a crime may or may not have been committed, and I'm now enforcing the law against you and potentially arresting you. And the more
Right.
exposure outside those confines, obviously, I got to imagine that many residual benefits, across the board from there. So that's awesome. So and we'll get to a lot more of what you found to be very helpful in addressing these issues. But, obviously the issue that's really been, at the forefront of everyone's mind and it swamped pretty much all of the discourse, and rightfully so, for the past month in, America is the tension between, the African-American community and law enforcement generally. You've seen it all. You've seen it from both sides. What got us here, and what do you see right now as some of the causes of that tension, and what led us to this point?
Wow, so very good questions. So it's a myriad of things. So in Black R&B culture, you'll hear tons of songs speaking against the policing and all of those things. So this is deep rooted. It has been around before I was born. In the 60s, the Watts riots was a cause of a police pullover. So that was the cause of the police pullover. The Rodney King riots, the cause was a police pullover. And here with the George Floyd, police pullover. So when we look at it, it's deeply rooted, and it is handed down. It is like a folklore story that is handed down from generation to generation in the Black community. Hey, we don't like the police. The police aren't good. The police aren't fair. Yada yada yada. All of that, and those are the things that I've heard in my community as a young man growing up in the city of Compton. That's what I believed. I believed that the police weren't any good. And so that is what's told. And then if we don't see anything different, that's what's caused. But the number one thing, I believe policing in general is great. However, if we don't take the time to sit down and engage people, then if I'm rude and I don't explain why I'm rude at the beginning, and I don't give you an explanation and make you feel like a man or woman after that engagement, then I have not done you a service. I've done police officers all across the world a disservice. So number one, it's assuming that everybody knows I'm out there to be good, right? That what I'm doing is good. No, I need to explain myself. I need to actually make sure that you know who I am, why I'm stopping you, and I need to engage you as a man or as a woman. So that's the very big thing. And number two is rude, all right? Being rude or authoritative, okay? I'm already in control. The law says I'm in control. So I don't have to make anybody feel any less because they already know I'm in control because I went through the training, I'm wearing the badge, I'm getting out of the car. So a lot of times it's being immature in law enforcement and not understanding that. It's not understanding that people have a tough time. It's like being abused. If you take a woman that's been abused by her previous boyfriend, previous husband, and then you take her on, she has issues. She's going to have issues. And so the Black community has issues because for all this time, no one has addressed this and fully given the Black community any valid reasoning why this is happening, and has not said, hey, we feel your pain, we feel your struggle. So those are some of the toughest things that go on and has caused this tension, right, with the Black community. Understanding that if we don't stop and begin to share and begin to talk, we're going to continue to see this thing spiral out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you make a really interesting point with the power of narrative, and that this isn't, this is just there's always going to be specific instances that need to be analyzed in and of themselves. But when you have the general narrative passed down from generation to generation that pits it adversarially right off the bat, I mean, that just becomes so difficult to get past. I mean, you in a unique position because, with your presence in the church and presence in the community, there's a lot more narrative power out there for you not to be seen in that light. But then, and as you mentioned in your book, some members of the community is like, yeah, Deputy Owens, I see you one way, but man, the rest of the police, I just don't see them that way. And and there may be it seems that to get past that narrative, someone's got to make the first move, or someone might need to extend themselves even more than they may feel should be justified. But listen, when you have to break through a narrative of that force and that thrust, it's the only choice. And so what, okay, so one thing that, as an outsider, but someone who studies this is kind of seeing, it feels a little bit like and going into the historical trajectory here, it feels like, some of modern policing still is responsive to an era in the 70s and 80s and early 90s and the gang wars, the crack wars, a time when, American inner cities simply were a more dangerous place. And, the police had to take a certain approach because, listen, that just was reflective of the circumstances on the ground. That maybe, in doing so, as crime has dropped over the past 15, 20 years in American cities, may not necessarily, running the cost benefit no longer work out. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Are there some holdovers from prior policing in response to the urban wars of the 70s and 80s that might still be, leading to some problems now?
Well, I don't know if I would say problems, but I know we haven't evolved as fast as society has evolved. So in policing, we believe that in taking the bad guy to jail, that the community is just happy with us taking the bad guy to jail. And so in that, I'm just looking for the bad guy. Now, you may get in the way, good guy, and I'm going to push you out the way and so I can get the bad guy. And it's like throwing a ball with your dog. Your dog just sees the ball. And whoever's in the way, he's going to try to get out the way, but he may bump you. And so, yeah, absolutely. And so in the evolution of what has taken place with crime coming down, with the media and with social media and all of these things, we are still in a place where we're just focusing in on getting the bad guy off the street. And society is saying, no, I want to be recognized. Hello, right? Understand who I am. Understand my feelings. I do have feelings. Please see me as a human being and as an individual. And yeah, go get all the bad guys off the street, but please treat me with respect and with honor and with dignity. And so you're absolutely right in the sense that we have not evolved as fast as society has. And so this is the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back when evolution hasn't taken place as fast as everyone else. It's like when my wife asks me to do something and then she gets mad, right? And I buy her a baseball for our anniversary, right? A baseball glove, right? Instead of those red pumps, right? And so you know what I'm talking about, right? And so what happens?
A little tone deaf, like you may not be listening.
Right. So in that, because it's all relational. And so what we've done is, okay, well, I thought you would like the glove. You watch baseball with me, honey, right? You know the Dodgers and we don't like the Angels, and you go to Dodger Stadium with me. I thought you would love the glove. And she's going, no, that's for you. And this is for me. And so in society, we're telling society, hey, the crime is down. We're doing a great job. And society is going, no. You're destroying, right, a race of people. You're destroying us. You're making us feel bad as you're getting crime off the street. And so we have to learn to balance that and bring it back together.
Yeah, no, understood. So some of the, some of the way that manifests itself when I speak with, African American friends of mine and what they're, one, obviously we have the issue of in New York in particular of stop and frisk, and then the issue that continues to come up is the traffic stops. I was pulled over. I was told that I fit the description of a suspect. They took a look at me. And, they let me go. See, that's something that doesn't get manifested in statistics because there was no crime. But once again, I think as anyone would acknowledge, if you're a rational observer and that keeps on happening to you, you're going to rightfully and logically believe that the system is aimed against you. And how are we going to reestablish trust after that? What, what have you seen in terms of that problem specifically? Hey, as a lawyer, I'm going to put it in terms of probable cause, but yes, violation of civil rights, being pulled over or being accused of a crime without probable cause, or with race being even almost, a replacement for probable cause. And so, that specific issue, way that this adversarial situation manifests itself, what are your views on that specifically?
Well, one of the ways we handle it at Compton Station is we do what we call a community academy. Okay. Right. A community academy is basically where we bring everyone in and we kind of take them through what we go through in law enforcement and how we get all of our information. And so what we'll do is we'll ask someone to come up. We'll take one of the kids. They'll interrupt the class. They'll come and talk to me, right? And they'll walk out. And then I'll go, hey, that young man just robbed me. Close your eyes and tell me what he had on, right? What was his complexion? What was his nationality? And so I write everything on the board, and we get all kinds of descriptions. And so I go, we don't make this up, right? The descriptions are given by somebody who was robbed. And so those descriptions aren't the right description. So when I get that information, if I'm being just honest as a police officer, I'm going off the description that that person gave me. That's what I'm doing. However, could people be getting pulled over just because driving while black? Could very well be, right? Could that happen? Yes, it could happen. And so in that, what I just try to explain to the community is that when that happens, you got to know your power. You got to know what you need to do, right? And so, no, I'm not going to tell you to debate and fight with a police officer, right, in the middle of the street. But maybe you need to get his number, his badge number, and go make a report, right? And you go, well, nothing's going to happen. Oh, things have changed. Things do happen now, right? And so if I make one report and nobody else does, not happening. But now if 3 people make a report on me for doing the same thing, that becomes an alert. And so what we have to begin to do is when our steak isn't prepared right, when our clothes aren't prepared right, we make a complaint. And it's still very important that you got to take the next 30 minutes out of your day to drive to the police station and make a complaint. Make a complaint for the next person. Okay, something may not happen to you, but you need to do it for your son or your daughter, and you have to begin to fight within the realms of the policy and procedures that have been designed by the department, specifically my department, the sheriff department. And so we share with people to become empowered by having knowledge. Get the knowledge of what happens, right? There's days off. When people start taking my money, I begin to act right. Right? I don't know about you. I'm not rich. I still need my check. So when those things happen and occur and I get days off for doing the wrong thing, that's what we're talking about, reform. And then we had a couple of captains that when a complaint was made, if they had the time, they would bring the officer, the deputy, back into the station, and they would talk face to face with the complainant, right? And then they would hash it out, right? Adult to adult.
Seems like you can't. We're looking for accountability, and there's no accountability like a face-to-face confrontation with a neutral observer. But given someone who feels that they've been, who has a grievance, a moment to be heard, and that seems like I can't think of any better way in terms of dispute resolution. That's the bread and butter right there.
Absolutely. And that worked. That was one of our captains did that, and it was so powerful. And I don't know, because I'm just a deputy, I don't know if the complaints went down. I don't know what with that, but I know the community members were saying, hey, I got a chance to talk to that deputy. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, how did you feel? Well, he held his ground, but we looked at each other eye to eye, and I felt comfortable. I didn't feel intimidated because the sergeant was there or the lieutenant was there. And so that was the power behind it.
Yeah. And also, I'm sure, once again, in putting in the mechanisms for oversight and accountability, an officer knowing that they may have to may be confronted by this person in the presence of their boss is going to make them think twice about acting out of bounds. And I think these are the types of mechanisms that you would find in other professions. And I'd imagine that some of the frustration has been feeling like, there are some reasons why peace officers who are given authority by the state may not be operating by the rules that everybody else is operating by. But right. In giving police officers that additional authority and that additional power, it doesn't work without the oversight and without the accountability.
Absolutely. And so we should be held accountable. We are supposed to come out of the community to serve the community. And so we should be held accountable.
Absolutely. A friend of mine, Mario, he and I have been discussing some of these issues for quite a while now. He posted some questions today. And, one thing that he always harped on that I mentioned to you earlier today is, the value in people from police officers being from the community, being comfortable with the community, and obviously, you know, with yourself as a black man, you know, this comes with a number of special characteristics around, you know, and obviously some you know, potential internal struggles over, you know, your position as a police officer in this community and breaking that narrative that we discussed. So how important, you know, do you believe it is that a police officer is from the community? You know, how can officers like yourself who are from the community pass those lessons and that comfort level, and the way to establish the comfort level off to other officers who may not be from the community?
And a very good question. So it would be great if people came from the community and policed their community. All right, that would be great. That's wonderful. However, our department, I believe we have a 10,000 member department, and I believe black deputies, male and female, we're about 10% of that department. So there's only about 1,000 of us on the 10,000 member department, somewhere around there. And so when you look at it, we don't get involved as black people. Historically, we're so turned off by policing, right, that we won't get involved and change it from this side. And so that was the one thing. And so that has been my desire, to have young black men and women to come in, and if you don't like what's going on, come on and help change it from the inside out. Secondly, just coming in and being a part of that community, you can be white, you can be Hispanic. What has to happen, though, is you have to begin to identify and connect with the community. And we had a deputy, Scott Calassi, tall, 6'4", 6'5", white guy from New Orleans. And he fit in with the community just as well. They loved him, and he was there maybe 15 years ago in Compton. But man, he fit in, and because he identified with the people, yes ma'am, yes sir, right, and just kind of knew how to talk and get along with the people. And so for me, in that, it could be anybody as long as you identify with the community. And identifying with the community doesn't mean that you're giving them a break. It doesn't mean that you let them slide. It just means that I identify you as a man or woman, and we have some things in common. And that is what happens. And once we begin to build common ground, we can take it from there. So common ground could be your favorite team. It could be your favorite food. It could be stopping by somebody's house during the fish fry, playing a game of dominoes or cards, bid, whist, and just kind of stopping in and checking on people during a non-threatening event. And what happens is the community begins to accept you, because you're not there just during difficult times. You're there during happy times, and you're celebrating with the community. And so my wife, her mom, there was a white officer named Vern King, LAPD, out of 108th, I think it's Southeast. And he would be over, I would drive up to see my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and it's 5 police cars out there. And my mother-in-law is feeding those policemen, and they're in the yard eating and having a great time with my mother-in-law and everybody in the community. And they were all white officers. And so what happens is when you learn to just connect with the community, people stop seeing color, right? But we have to do that as law enforcement. We have to begin to reach out, and we have to learn how to reach out, and we have to learn how to take a break from chasing crime to just connecting with regular people. As I always say, we know every drug dealer, we know his nickname, we know his real name, we know every gang member, we know his nickname, we know his real name. But if you ask a deputy to name 20 good people in the city and where they live, it may be difficult.
Yeah.
And what that says is they're just focused in on getting the bad guy. And so we have to kind of turn that mindset. Don't stop getting the bad guy, but at least now focus on the good people and build some connection with them.
And it's something that you mentioned in your book that, you know, listen, even a product company, a merchandise company, they have customer service, right? It's not just about getting a product in somebody's hands, not just about delivering law enforcement. It's about the customer service and about, you know, kind of the savoir-faire that comes along with that.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to put your, you know, your community leader hat on for a second, you know. If you want to describe maybe, you know, some of your activities with the church and with the Compton Initiative for a minute, and then, you know, kind of discuss what you're hearing from the community, you know, at the church, in your position, you know, with taking your badge off, and, you know, what people are coming to you and talking about right now.
Yeah, I've been a pastor for, wow, 20, 25 years, pastor a 2,000 member church in the city of Compton where I work, and very active. I wanted, as that deputy said, the church wasn't involved. And so I wanted to, if I ever pastored, I wanted my church to be involved. And so we're in a number of things, specifically the Compton Initiative. Compton Initiative is led by Ken Korver and Emmanuel Reformed Church, a church in Paramount, just southeast of Compton. And they are basically had a heart to see the city revitalized, and they do it through painting. And I'm on the board with the Compton Initiative 4 times a year. They pick about 20, 25 homes each time, and they paint those homes absolutely for free for the people and the residents of Compton, believing that if we can clean the city of Compton up and also receive some spiritual guidance, that the city would begin to lift, right? And people would begin to feel pride. And that is the whole mission behind the Compton Initiative. And it's a great organization. It's called Just Do Good. Those of you that want to look it up, Just Do Good. And you can come out and bring your organization and be a part of that. Secondly, our church is involved because I'm a deputy. I know what's going on. We have human trafficking. And so our human trafficking, what we found out is that black men are pimping our black young ladies, right? And so that is an issue. That is an issue for me. And so we're involved in human trafficking, and we take the ladies from our church and they go out and talk to the young ladies, and the men will kind of just stand by to make sure our ladies can talk to those young ladies and try to bring them in and make sure that we connect with them. We're also involved in the high schools, all the high schools, Centennial, Compton, and Dominguez. We kind of sponsor those schools and help the principals and the teachers and just let them know they're appreciative. We appreciate what they're doing and lifting the education standard for our young people. And so in that, being so involved in the city, performing weddings for people in the city and that don't have a church, and performing funerals for people that don't have a church in the community, and just being there, people are still hurting behind what has taken place. They feel like law enforcement has always done this. And the one thing that really lets me know is that when I pull up in uniform in my black and white, they call me pastor. They don't even address me as deputy, right? Because they don't want to even associate me with that. And so in hearing that, I know that there is a change, and people are wanting to figure out, how can we change? What can we do? What do we need to do to change? How can we begin to make our voices heard? And what does that look like? And so in our community, we have begun to hear that from not only my members, and a lot of them love me to death, but they can't stand the police, right? And so understanding that. And so for me, I was conflicted, like, hold on, I'm the police. Don't talk about them that bad. I'm your pastor and I'm the police, but I could feel their pain. And so a lot of them are still feeling pain and are hurting and are looking for answers and looking for an apology. And they're just looking and searching for some type of resolution to what's going on. And they want to make sure that something takes place this time, because a lot of times people have promised them things and nothing has ever taken place. So they're really fired up about making something happen regarding this event. And now they're going to take it forward for their children and their nieces and nephews.
Absolutely. And in terms of, of what's going to happen from here, and how there may be some, the recourse or the satisfaction or the attention to their grievances and frustrations that they haven't felt addressed over the years. One of the responses right now is a movement to, quote unquote, defund the police. We can, obviously get into, the distinction between slogan and in practice what that means. But there is a movement to reduce the budget reduce the budget of law enforcement and repurpose some of that money for other community endeavors. Obviously we can. I'm no expert on law enforcement and civic budgets. You can sometimes look at a line item in the police budget, like $600 million a year in bullets, for instance, and that comes off somewhat shocking. Then you can certainly think of, okay, wait a second, this might not be a well-funded enough organization as is. Should we really be cutting funding? To the extent you're at liberty to speak, what are your thoughts on, hey, maybe we got to be able to run this thing more efficiently. Maybe there is some waste that we've let build up that can be repurposed for more constructive endeavors. And what's your view on what's going on budgetarily with law enforcement right now?
Well, being just a deputy, and I say just a deputy, so as you are, I have no expertise in line items or budgeting as it relates to law enforcement. But what I do know is that in defunding the police, I believe what people are saying is, hey, we want to take some of this money away from the police and allocate it some other places. And my whole thing is just make sure that policing, right, that you can reach out to the people and that you don't lose the security that you need in order to have a nice, safe, happy life. When we look at defunding the police, Seattle just experienced that, where the residents took over a portion of the area, and they had 2 murders there and a bunch of rapes and all that's going on because they wouldn't let the police nor the fire department in. So I don't think it's defunding the police that the community wants to see. I believe they want to see reform. All right. So what does reform look like? And so when you shout all of this out, you have to have some type of idea of what it looks like, right? Because nobody knows what it looks like, right? So you tell me, hey, you're not doing the right thing. Well, what does the right thing look like? And so understanding that. So we need to get the people together, the community, law enforcement leaders, and go, okay, so what does that look like? All right. You can't just say we don't want black men killed, right? Because you just said it's more than that. It's people being pulled over, driving while black. So there are a number of things, a myriad of things that we have to address. And I believe it has to be addressed by community leaders, law enforcement personnel, and people that are in the community. And we sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk and go, is this feasible? Can this work? All right. Can we try a pilot program in maybe one area of the city to see if it does work? Mm-hmm. But I don't think we should just go right across the board and wipe it out with an idea that we don't know if it works. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. But yeah, we need police reform. We need to learn how to be a kinder, gentler police department. Sure. We need to learn how to speak to people when we're at 7-Eleven getting our coffee. We need to learn how to engage in conversation, right? Because that breaks down a whole lot of things. So in police reform, what does that look like? Do you want to see a police officer at the park, right? In uniform, right? Do you want to see the police officer, right, at the market? So all of those things we have to begin to ask. And what does that look like? Should a police officer be at church handing out flyers? Because all of these are non-threatening places. And what it does is it builds reform and it builds engagement, which we are lacking, right? Because I can ask everybody that's on here, we have a number of viewers, how many police officers do you know by name, right? And so most people can give me probably 2, maybe 3, right? And that's probably family members. And so when we look at it, it's on both sides, because you can actually pick up the phone and go, hey, I want to meet my local police officer. All right, well, he's busy right now, but we'll send him out there, right? And every day you can put a call in and that police officer will come to your home. So it works both ways, but we need to learn how to make that happen.
For sure. So, I think that in terms of budgeting and the financial component here, you can certainly envision a lower budget and a more efficiently run police department and law enforcement. We want to just make sure that this is done, that if there are cuts, that they're done through a diligent thought process, constructively, and in a symbiotic communication with the community way that makes sense, as opposed to something that's a little haphazard that just says, okay, here's X, we need it to be 80% of X. We really do. That would seem to be the best way to address that piece of it.
Right. So because if you say, all right, we're only giving them the bullets they need to be issued, right? And then I get into a shooting because I haven't shot all year. Now we get sued because I haven't had any training in shooting. So when you begin to look at why the budget for the bullets are so much, is because we have to shoot. I have to shoot 4 times a year to qualify to keep my shooting up. So all of those things have to be explained, right?
Mhm.
And I was just using that as an example. So in all of that, somebody needs to go through this and go, well, how much money do you need? Why do you need all of these bullets? Can we just, you only have this many people in patrol. Why does everybody have to shoot? And so then we begin to ask questions and get to where we need to get to in defunding or reallocating finances and money and things of that nature.
Absolutely, absolutely. To address, the Black Lives Matter movement a little more specifically, as you and I discussed earlier, and something that you said that was very interesting, and particularly given your position with the church. And once again, I'm only know from a distance, but an understanding that historically the church had been a very powerful and important institution in the African American community, and that for a long time, and if you think about the civil rights leaders over decades. Reverend Martin Luther King, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, anyone associated with the leaders associated with the civil rights movement all seem to have some association with the church. And and speaking about Black Lives Matter, and that you said you kind of recognize that. Listen, whatever tactics of theirs, that some of which we may or may not agree with, but they gave a voice to something that needed to be given a voice to, that previously people had been relying on the church to give a voice to, or to lead the charge on. And the church religious institutions seem to have dropped the ball a little bit. So a less centralized and non-denominational, if you will, movement like Black Lives Matter, something had to come and give a voice to this community, and that's what did. And I found that very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the church didn't kind of drop the ball. We did drop the ball. So since Martin Luther King, the Black church, the Black America has had no leader, no outright leader that galvanized us the way Martin Luther King did. And so the Black church went from fighting for rights and fighting for all of these things to now we've gotten very comfortable, and our mission has become money and members instead of actually fighting for what was right and being that forefront. So if we are Christians, Christ was always with the gangsters, the thugs, and the smugglers. He spent 10% of his time in the church and 90% of his time with the people that really needed him. And so the church has now kind of flipped that, and we spend 90% of our time in the church and 10%. And thereby we lost, right, the ear of these young people. We lost the ear of all of these other people. And so Black Lives Matter, whether you agree with them or not, whether you agree with their mission statement or not, they gave a voice to George Floyd's death. They gave a voice to that and to all the other people. And so people are now reading their mission statement and go, well, I don't agree with all of that. Well, what they did do was they galvanized the world. They galvanized the world and has called attention to this and has kind of put some organization to what is going on and given a leadway to address what has taken place. LAPD, right? The city cut $150 million, right there. So, and Black Lives Matter was right there. And the church is now trying to catch up. The Black pastors are now trying to catch up. And so in that, we have to understand that, and God does it. If we don't step up, God will use somebody, all right? And so I'm talking to Black Christians now. If we don't step up and do what we're supposed to do, he will use somebody, and we can get mad and upset, but really we have to point the finger at ourselves and go, we blew this. We let our people down. We were trying to build bigger churches and build bigger homes for ourselves and drive nicer cars, and we lost focus on what is real, hurting people and real issues.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and hey, I've tried that, like I said, a couple times. I'm Jewish, but I've attended churches, and it's been an incredibly invigorating experience. And I've seen, first time I went, I said, "Oh my God, no wonder, no wonder people are so loyal and so want to affiliate so strongly with the church." It's a very inspiring experience. So
Yes.
in your reform efforts, I'm really interested to see where you're going, and look, whenever it's safe again, look forward to attending in person.
Yes, sir.
So as I've tried to get more educated on Black Lives Matter, specifically the movement as opposed to the concept. A friend of mine, Brandon, I don't know if he's watching right now. He's, I believe, lightly affiliated with the organization. And it was really interesting to me, two pieces in particular. One, how in straying from, okay, we have Martin Luther King, this is something that is verticalized, centralized with the leader. One, not leaderless, decentralized, one. And two, specifically in understanding that so many of the incidents that lead to a lot of this tension that have shown themselves to be, that we don't want only these perfect angels who happen to be victims of police brutality, that we're going to understand that sometimes there are people that, like a George Floyd, even though what obviously his immediate crime, forging $20, but hey, they may not be angels, but just because they may have had a checkered past, that does not disqualify them as legitimate members of this movement, and showing that what was done to them was wrong, just because they may have technically have been criminals. I found those to be two very interesting aspects that I think a lot of people who just see BLM from afar in media don't understand, that those are two deliberate aspects of the movement that were thought through. They're not just haphazard. Wondering if you have any thoughts on those two aspects of it.
Well, so for me, decentralized, where you don't have a specific leader, not my choice. I would prefer to have leadership, and then history shows us that not only should you have a captain, but a lieutenant and a sergeant. You should have 2 or 3 people that are just as involved and ready to take over, just in case, God forbid, something happens to the leader, and they should be ready to go. But in that, if it's working for them and what we're doing, the whole thing is to call and bring attention, right, and resolution to what is going on. So when you get back to it, what we really want and what they're really looking for is for resolve, right, and something to take place. And so in that, if no matter how it gets done, right, no matter what happens, if I'm not involved, I learn to keep my mouth off of it, right, because I'm not involved in, how dare I talk about something I didn't have the guts to get involved in anyway. And so in that, it seems to be working, right, because they come up everywhere. You just had somebody, I think, representing Chicago, and they were on CNN, and you have someone in LA. And so what they have seems like it's working, and the movement is still moving, right? It's still in the forefront. It's still drawing media attention. And so if it works, then by all means, keep it going. And I'm 53. I forgot the second part of the question.
Oh, on the second, well, it was just the other piece of it, in that let's call it the notable individuals who are the victims who trigger some of the community response, like a George Floyd, that we're not, they want to specifically make sure we're not simply disqualifying someone as a figurehead in the movement simply because they may have had a checkered past. The way that my friend put it is that we're not just looking for Rosa Parks. We're not just looking for these people in heroic moments, that some people may be victims of the problem that we're trying to expose, even if they may have some blotches on their record and some problems in their past.
Absolutely. So we're not even worried. So their past had nothing to do with that man being on his neck.
Yeah.
So that has nothing to do with it. And so we're both in agreement in that. I agree wholeheartedly. Whether you're a criminal or not, we have a rule: when the handcuffs go on, the handcuffs go on. Everything stops, right? If we have you now under control, then let's get up. I don't care who you are. You're now going to be treated with some dignity and some respect, and you can go to jail with dignity and respect. That is the mission of the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department, right? And I'm not representing the Sheriff Department, but that is what I was taught as a deputy sheriff, that you don't have to belittle anyone. It is not your job. God made us all equal, and you don't have to belittle anyone. Them being caught is shame enough for whatever they've done. And then you let the judge and everybody else handle that. And so I totally agree. We don't look at anyone's past and go, hey, he was a criminal, and that's why it totally justifies him dying. Not at all. Not at all. And I have a ton of friends and a ton of partners that believe the same thing, that no, we don't do that. We judge each case on its individual merit.
Absolutely. And so I want to actually dive further into this, specifically about policing techniques, and even go a step further in the specificity here. Instagram, for better or for worse, taps out after an hour. So what we do, and what I usually do here is I'll end this live, save it, and then I'll start another live back up, and we can continue for a little while. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir. No
Awesome.
problem.
All right, everybody. So I'm going to stop it right now, and I'll pop back in just a second.
Do I need to do anything?
Nope, you're good. You're good. I'll send the live right now and tap back in. With Deputy Owens. Boomer, the man who made it all happen, Boomer Wells. Shout out to Boomer Wells. He introduced me to Deputy Owens originally a couple years ago and reconnected us for this, so he will get his due. Okay. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Woo! Boomer getting the love that he deserves. Okay, there we go. All right, round two.
Round two.
Okay, so to get a little bit deeper into the specifics of policing tactics and policies, another question that my friend Mario posed is, where have you seen in the situations that have gone wrong, like something incredibly obvious, like a Derek Chauvin, George Floyd situation, where even beyond pure humanity tells you do not put your knee on this man's neck for 8.5 minutes. Beyond that, where have you seen where current policies and techniques that may actually be in the handbook may not necessarily be the shrewdest approach and may have led to problems in the past?
So yeah, I don't follow a whole lot of news, so I wouldn't even know, because I don't watch the news.
Sure.
And I don't know of any. I know this one because I've seen that one, the George Floyd, but I haven't seen any other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the one in Atlanta, and I wouldn't comment on that one at this time because it's still under investigation. But those are the only two I've seen, sir. I don't watch the news. I watch ESPN.
It's just probably keep you more mentally in a better mental frame of mind.
Yes, sir.
One general approach towards policing is called broken windows policing. It was an approach that was adopted a lot in response to some of the higher crime areas in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The idea that smaller lifestyle, quote unquote, lifestyle crimes should be prosecuted at higher rates to keep the community clean, to remove some of the vestiges of crime, and that it would have a residual effect of getting people more invested in their community, treating it more with more respect generally, and lead to kind of exponential benefits in reducing crime. Some people, I think that we can definitely look at that approach in a lot of respects and see a lot of the of what the communities have benefited from. Some people are now questioning, some of the wisdom of the direction that broken windows has gone in some respects. What are your thoughts on broken windows, both in in theory and as how it's been applied?
Well, so for me, in addressing the smaller crimes, I believe all the smaller crimes should be addressed and enforced. Now, what type of enforcement? That's the question. But throwing paper outside your car while you're driving should be enforced, because it says, I don't care about the community. I care more about the inside of my car than the community that I'm driving in right now. Now, what kind of enforcement should that be? I don't know, but I know they should go before a judge, and that judge should maybe sentence them to community service where they're cleaning up the street. But what takes place is we have to bring consciousness to people who aren't aware, and maybe they're not even aware that it even means something. It was just one piece of paper, but it was a gum wrapper. But if 300 people are throwing gum wrappers out, then we now have a problem. So I believe the broken window theory should be addressed. I know it would inundate the courts, number one, but at least making people aware, conscious of those small things. Having the street sweeper. When I was a little boy, my dad would make me take the trash cans in for people that didn't, or the ladies that didn't have any children for them. Or sometimes we would even have to cut their lawn. And so what was he teaching me? Community pride, right? And it is okay to take care of somebody else's lawn, somebody else's trash cans, because it makes the entire community look good. And so the flip side of that, one dirty house that does not water their grass, where everybody hangs out, can bring shootings. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? All the houses on the block look good, and there's one home that grandma left the house, and all you got to do is pay the taxes, but nobody wants to get it painted. Nobody wants to upkeep it. Nobody wants to make the grass grow. And that is where all of our crimes occur. So I've seen it on both sides. And I just believe that somehow, some way, do I believe people should go to jail or get money taken from them that they don't have? No, but I do believe that there is some way that we can bring consciousness to each and every person that does something like that. Because if you take care of the small stuff, the big things will begin to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. Trying to, make people conscious of that principle without, maybe indulging in some of the, more questionable tactics that New York is really where a lot of this, the focus is on where broken windows seems to have gone wrong, a lot in terms of stop and frisk, where without it becoming kind of a ubiquitous Big Brother situation where it feels like the police are always watching everybody,
right,
for every slip up, and it almost feels like harassment. So without letting it mission creep into that, but still getting people to show pride and buy into their community really seems to be where it's at.
Right. And that whole thing is not just addressing people, but it is the community. So the storefronts, the 7-Elevens, the liquor stores, all should be painted in uniform. When you go through downtown areas in most cities, everything is uniform. The color scheme, the setback, all of those things are uniform, and there is a pride that goes through that. And so in doing that, all of those things should be addressed, from the local city government to law enforcement to code enforcement. Everyone should be on one accord addressing those small things so that it beautifies the city and builds some type of pride.
Absolutely. Another issue, sub-issue on law enforcement that's been making the rounds is training. And a lot of people, there's a lot of memes that seem to contrast the path to becoming a police officer, the training system, the breadth and volume of training that American police officers or law enforcement officials seem to get, in contrast to law enforcement officials in other countries. So, you mentioned it in your book in terms of, specifically needing more training in terms of community service and community relations. So just generally, what do you think could be improved in terms of training, both in regards to community relations and maybe a little more holistically?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that policing and getting the bad guy off the street is utmost important. All right, so that people can walk their dogs at 9 o'clock at night and not feel afraid. People can enjoy the park and all of those things without feeling afraid. So policing needs to take place. Where we have come up short, I believe, is that we don't engage enough. So we don't stop by the church, the local church. We don't participate at the elementary school. We don't go to career day unless we're called on or asked. We don't just stop by or stop at the local grocery store and make conversation with people. So we're in that car, and it's almost like being in a bubble, and we don't get out unless we have to take action. And so what I truly believe is that we need to begin to connect with the community. And so in ways that we actually find out who the bad guys are, and we do FIs, and we field interview them, and we keep going by their homes, and we get to know who they are. We need to do that with regular good people. Stop by, knock on doors, get out of our cars, and maybe walk one block and just interact. If kids are out there playing basketball, play basketball with them, and then circle back around the next day so that they can see your face and get to know you. Those things really bring down the heightened tension between people, because once you know my name, hey, that's Owens. It kind of, you know me, right? And hey, Mikey, how you doing? And so now we know each other and we're building a relationship. So it's kind of hard. It's really hard to do somebody wrong whose name you know. And you know they live down the street. And so building that connection is really important. And we have to learn how to incorporate that in our training, where we sit down and we go meet the liquor store owner, we meet the manager of the local grocery store, we meet the local pastor, things like that. And then I believe that before any law enforcement person gets hired into a city, he needs to meet with those city leaders.
Yeah.
So the day he or she gets sworn in, he or she gets to meet all the leaders, all the pastors, all the principals, and all the block club members, right? I'm Miss Jones. Good to meet you. What's your first name? Mark. Okay, Mark Johnson. I'll be looking for you. So now, not only has he met some good people, he knows that these people are going to hold him accountable, and they're going to call his name when they see him at the store, when they see him driving by. And so there's some things that can be done that will make everyone know, no, we're holding you accountable because we met with you. And you're going to take your oath in front of everybody in this community that loves this community. And so that kind of will bridge the gap and then make that new police officer come in and go, oh, these people are serious. Yeah. They really want a great community. So things like that would actually assist in a great way. Yeah. Every police officer should go meet every pastor, because the strongest, most influential place in any Black community is the Black church. Yeah. Is the Black church. Mm-hmm. We don't have Rotary clubs and we don't have all the fancy clubs. What we have is the Black church. And so every officer needs to go into the Black church and meet those pastors, right? And meet those leaders and find out who they are, because then that will begin to bring the tension down, because we know each other on a first name basis.
Absolutely. And it seems like that's how, and going back to, just a key point, that the more, listen, we're not going to be able to have any situation where the entire police department is from the community, but clearly there are benefits to having members from the community being members of being in the police department. So a way to bring some of those residual to spread that benefit is to integrate them in the manner in which you just described, and also something we discussed that was proposed by my friend as well, to almost make those that are from the community, regardless of rank, regardless of whether or not they're the captain, some sort of mentorship program where they do play a specific role in helping people acclimate and get comfortable with the community one way or the other, regardless of whether they're third year, whether they're captain, whether they're 20-year veteran or anything.
Yes, absolutely. And when the community takes part in that, it solidifies the united stance, right? Mm-hmm. So you have young people that want to sit on the outside and say everything, but no, we need to bring them to the table, mm-hmm. right? You come to the table and you meet this officer as well. And so now if everyone's meeting the officer, that breaks down all the stereotype, right? It breaks it all down, because we met each other in your swearing in. I saw you raise your right hand and swear, right, that you would uphold the values of this community. And so it makes a huge difference. And then embracing them, bringing them in and making sure that the community sees them and they see and know the community.
Absolutely. So you've seen you've seen periods before of heightened tension between the police or just the added when temperatures have run hot, particularly in the aftermath of the Rodney King trial and the ensuing riots. And so you've seen periods where it felt a little difficult or challenging to get people to want to be police officers. Do you foresee that being a challenge in the upcoming period? And if so, how to transcend that challenge?
Oh, yeah, especially for the Black community. So the sheriff department right now, I believe we're down somewhere between 500 to 1,000 bodies, somewhere around there. We need police officers for staffing, and it's indirectly we've seen it slow down since the Mike Brown and Ferguson right? And
Got
so
it.
from that one, we've seen our numbers dwindle from people retiring and not people not coming on. It's a huge disparity. Most law enforcement agencies around the country are in need of people to join and become law enforcement police officers and deputy sheriffs.
Mhm.
I believe one way is to we're going to have to begin to toot our own horn, and that means get on social media, right, and show all the positive attributes. The people that are in law enforcement, we're going to have to actually sell this, and your friends that are high character, high moral people that you know are good people, we're going to have to lock in. We're going to have to get to the church and talk to those influential pastors, right? Because I didn't want to be a police officer. I didn't want to be a deputy sheriff. I was going to UCLA, got kicked out, thought I was going to be a rapper, thought I was going to be a basketball player. That was, and that's probably every young black man's dream. I'm going to be a rapper. I'm going to be a black basketball player or an athlete. And so after all of that's over, what can you do? Well, if you have some type of athletic ability, well, you got to be in physical good shape. You can be in law enforcement. If you have common sense and able to learn, you can be in law enforcement. And so we're going to have to promote that and do some aggressive promoting in a great way. I have a daughter right now in the academy. She's in the academy. And I told her, whoa, what do you want to be in law enforcement? And she goes, after all you've done and all you're doing and everything I've seen you do in the community, you're going to tell me not to get involved? And so she's done her 4 year or 8 years, 6 years in college. She has her master's, and she's coming right back and involved in law enforcement in the academy right now. And I couldn't be prouder of the decision that she made, right? Because number one, evidently what I was doing affected her, and what she see I'm doing affected her, that she now wants to help the community. And so that's what has to be done. We have to actually reach out. And there are good young men and women. And we're going to have to do ride-alongs, right? Let them get in the car. We're going to have to pull down the mystique of law enforcement. It's not a secret society, but come on in. Come to the station, right? Come to our baseball games, our softball games. Come and find out we're regular people. We barbecue, right? And we have good fun. We like to laugh and joke and see who we are. And then once we pull the badge off and you see that we're regular people, I believe people will go, man, no, I can do this. I can make a difference. Because when I tell people, even the Black Lives Matter people, even the people that don't like the police, we're on the same mission. We're just on different sides. We're on the same team. You're just offense, I'm defense. See, on the football team, only one team plays at a time. Either offense is on the field or defense, but they're the same team. Right? And so that's what I say. I'm just working this from the inside. You can work it from the outside, but we got to find more people to work it from the inside. And any young person that you're in a crossroad in your life right now and you don't know what to do and you want to help, right? I encourage you to come in and at least check out law enforcement, see what it's all about.
Absolutely. And, and having people like yourself who've been able to show that, show those positive attributes by example. I mean, there's nothing more positive than leading by example. And, or right now there are a lot of the images, and there's certainly, listen, it's not all pretty, and there's certainly some ugliness, and there's certainly a lot of things that have gone wrong. And, and the tension is not, people are not imagining these problems. Okay. There's a reason that such a powerful voice has sprung up in regards to these issues. So, but we want to look at the full picture, not just the picture that may get our emotions running as the most powerfully. Speaking of which, and I think a lot of, particularly on social media, a lot of people commenting on these current issues, they're young. They don't quite remember some of the occurrences of the late 80s and early 90s, particularly once again, and Rodney King and the riots, and something that you were, as you've described, at right in the crosshairs of, for lack of a better term. So you've seen a trajectory before where temperatures may run a little hot and then they cool off, and then there were some improvements made, not perfection, but progress was made. So in seeing what how law enforcement and community, the Compton community improved, evolved, and grew through the late, after things recovered in the mid 90s and through the late 90s in the last 15, 20 years, what do you believe is replicable, and what would you like to see in terms of the healing process, and after after, you know, as you mentioned the first time we spoke, and, you know, it's like a couple that had a fight, and now they've got to repair it. So what do you see in terms of healing and repairing what, you know, the repairing the breaches that have arisen recently?
I would love to see, number one, the leaders of the community, the young people come. So the young people, they're the driving force behind this. People 40 and over, we're kind of, you know, chipping in on social media, making our comments, but the young people are actually marching, right, with the notion that COVID is still real, but this is so important, we're going to march anyway. So you got young people doing that. That's not old people. People like me, like, no, I need to keep my life. I'm about to retire in 9 months. I'm not going out there to the COVID. And so the people that are driving that force, we need them to come to the table because they have the passion, they have the purpose, and then we need to sit down and go, what do you see? What do you want to see? Right? And don't just tell me, stop shooting us. No, let's break it all the way down. Right? Let's break it all the way down. My wife would always tell me when I come into the house, right? And so we had 6 kids, and they're sitting in family time. I'm just coming in from work. The kitchen's not clean, right? And they're sitting around. The house is kind of messy. And I come in and start barking orders. And she's going, hey, right? Not in front of the kids in the room, right? Time out, get in here. Hey, you didn't even come and ask and see what's going on. You think you're fixing something, and I'm spending quality time with the kids right now. At least sit your behind down and figure out what's going on. Oh, well, I you know, typical man, I didn't know, honey. I'm sorry. All right, well, I tell you what, if I do it again, just give me the color blue. Just say blue, right? And so sure enough, 3 weeks go by, and I come in barking orders, and blue, blue. So I'd go outside, get myself together, right? Talk to myself. I don't know what she's talking about. The house is a mess. Yep, but okay. And so I come in and I would sit down, right, and get involved in what they were doing, right? And what she was doing was laying a foundation for legacy for our children. And so I had the honor to participate. And so a lot of times when we're leading this thing as law enforcement, we think that everything that we're doing is right, and we need to listen to the people we're leading. Yeah. Right? Any good supervisor, your product doesn't make it. It is the people that push the product. I don't care what you have. If you don't have a person pushing that product, it's not going anywhere. It could be the best product. And so we have to learn to listen to the people that we're serving. And so I want to hear what they have to say. And then I want to look you in the face and go, that can't happen. No, we're not going to walk around without our guns. This is Compton. That ain't going to happen. But what else can we do? Right? Can you invite me to the hood party? Right? Right? Can I come to Big Mama's fish fry? I won't stay long. I'll make a cameo. I'll play a hand of dominoes. I'll shake some hands, and then I'll go on about my business. But can that help bridge the gap? Because what we have to understand is that if we don't start talking, and I'm not talking about having a forum, I'm talking about shaking hands, meeting, and then getting a plan, and let's implement the plan. Because information is great, but application is better. And a lot of times we get a lot of information, and then there's no application. And so we stay right where we are, and I don't want to lose this fire. So we need to sit down with those community leaders, and not the ones that want to be seen, not the ones that want to be on television. We need to sit down with the people that really have a heart for the community and want the community to go to the next level, right? Because law enforcement is not going anywhere, and the community is not going anywhere. We're in a relationship. It may be bad, it may be dysfunctional, but it's going to stay that way until we decide to work it out. There is no divorce court. We're stuck with each other. Right? We don't have irreconcilable differences. We are here. And so we have to learn to figure that out. And that comes from sitting down, working it out. And then if I don't get it right, doing it again until I get it right and until we begin to bridge this gap. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Absolutely.
I will ask you, you know, Black Lives Matter has been active for a handful of years now. And, you know, certainly risen incredibly prominent over the past 6 weeks in particular. Have you found the people that are representing that movement forthcoming in having this discussion, even not that it's going to be all, rainbows and sunshine, that it may be a difficult conversation, one that is in some ways tense and potentially somewhat hostile and adversarial. But is that move, has a dialogue been open between that particular movement and the police?
So I know that in the news, in the one clip I saw, they were in with the mayor of the city of LA. I don't know if they've met with the sheriff Villanueva. I don't know. Remember, I'm boots on the ground, and I don't get invited to those meetings. So I'm boots on the ground. So I would not know. And those meetings are usually with the sheriff and his command staff, and trying to figure out what they want, if they can implement it. And I don't know if we've met within the sheriff department, nor LAPD. I know through the news that they've met with the city of LA and the mayor of LA.
Got it. Beyond, obviously, you've very clear, and I think the key, the real key mechanism here is more participation in a non-threatening manner, more communication. Beyond the obvious, what would you like to see in terms of, you said you're going to be retiring relatively soon. Beyond when you are no longer with the force, what would you like to see in terms of reform that you think could be improved? And if you were to sit here 5 years from now and you go and visit your daughter, she's active on the force, something, aside from core community relations, which is just very obvious, what changes would you like to see?
I'd like to see the entire, the last pillar in my book is called the pillar of empowerment. And so I would like to see the community actually take back their power and stop depending so much on law enforcement, stop depending so much more on local government, your city council people, hold them accountable, but rally up together. We had some great people in Compton that not only did they participate in the Compton cleanup, but they began to do their own cleanup, right? And they were doing that throughout the city. And so to see them begin to take on issues in the city, holding people accountable, but not only holding people accountable, but taking on the issues and then moving those issues themselves, implementing ideas, and then also manifesting those ideas right within the city. So I would like to see the community take hold of it. In the book, I was talking about how they had a liquor store that was infiltrating one of the private elementary schools. And so the churches, the local churches, and the parents of that elementary school began to picket that liquor store, right? And so all they did was notify the sheriff department, hey, we're going to be picketing. There's going to be some old ladies out here. You may want to watch out for the owner of the store because the old ladies are tired of the owner of the store. So when you have mothers out there and grandmothers and young people out there holding their signs up and economically impacting somebody, they will listen, right? And so they did that all by themselves, so much so that that liquor store owner put in new lighting, ran the people away, and kind of reopened that liquor store. And so I would like to see the empowerment. I would like to see the community step up and not be so much of a victim, not so much pointing finger, but going, that's what we need to do. Let's get up and make that happen. And then what happens is law enforcement and the local government gets in behind that push, and then we walk together because we're not enemies. And that's the one thing I want everybody to know. We're not enemies. Sir Robert Peel said that the law enforcement comes from the community, and the community is law enforcement. So we're all the same. And so that's what I truly would like to see. I would like to see us all come together, and then we would see a turn in the community, and crime would dissipate. It would literally go away when everybody participates.
Yeah, and that's, it seems like in terms of, and looking at the root causes here, obviously there's some economic, it stems from some economic concerns, and people looking around and see, but the more people look around and see opportunity, pride, that feel, as you mentioned in your book, feel buy-in with their life, feel like they're part of the system, like they're being respected, like like there's a place for them. All of a sudden, some of these, less savory less savory choices in their life don't seems like such good choices. So, you know, the more that we can get people to believe in the system and believe and justifiably believe in the system, we don't want them to, you know, we don't want it to be a fantasy. We want them to believe in the system because it works for them. So, you know, anything that we can do to drive towards that end, you know, is all to the better. So Deputy Owens, and I know we've gone about an hour and a half. I know you have a family to get back to. So, you know, going to let you go here in just a second, but it's been, you know, an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah.
You know, hey, it was great meeting you a couple years ago, the first time I participated in the Compton Initiative. I'm hoping
Yes,
that,
sir.
you know, public health will allow that to occur, that program to occur again. I believe it would be early next year if it was back on schedule.
January, preferably January. We may do something in October, but if not October, it'll be January, early January.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. And so are you back at church right now? Are we meeting every Sunday, or what's the status on religious gatherings?
Oh no, we're live streaming. So I have 2,000 members, 200 of which are seniors, 60 and above, and they are gangsters. They actually run the church and run me. And they told me we're not opening up until the model goes down, right? The spike goes down, or there is a vaccine. So we're just live streaming on Facebook and Instagram, and trying to keep hold of all the members and making contact with them.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Well, once again, you know, as soon I can't wait to make a trip down to the church once everybody is in person, and you know, again, man, the power of the sermon through the phone is impactful enough, as we've seen in the comments. So can't wait to see it in person.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you owe me. You got to come down to the church, and you got to come and do a ride along with me before I retire.
Absolutely, it's all happening, man. It would be my honor. So I will definitely be taking you up on that. Deputy Owens, if there's anything, you know, your book, if there's any of your other resources that you want to put on people's radar right now.
Yeah, so the book is called The 7 Pillars to Community Leadership. You can look it up. It's on Amazon.com. And it's just 7 principles, very simple principles on just how to connect with your local law enforcement. So I'm not doing anything worldly, global, or national. This is on a personal level. You introducing your children to the police so they will know them. You knowing your local law enforcement and building that relationship one person at a time. Also, how to connect with the people on your street. In the 60s, 70s, where I grew up, everybody knew everyone on the street. And now we kind of wave and pull into our garage, close our garage, and enter, right, our homes through the garage. We don't wave. We have automatic sprinklers. We don't sit outside and water our grass. And so we don't even know each other anymore. So get to know your neighbors after all of this is over. One great way is to go knock on the door now. Step back and go, are you okay? Are you mentally okay? I'm your neighbor from down the street. Make a friend. When all of this is over, go borrow a cup of sugar like your mother used to tell you, right? Go next door and get a cup of sugar because we got to connect. Social media is great, but it does not replace human touch and human connection. And I just want to say, be the best, all right? COVID-19 is here. We look like we're going to be in this thing for at least through the end of the year. Develop a game plan for your life right now. Stop waiting on things to get back to normal. All right, you should be developing a game plan for your life. You should be setting some goals right now. All right, are you going to come out of this a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk, right? So get your body in shape, get your mind in shape, all right, and get a vision so you can go forward in your life, all right, and develop your business. Use all of this great time to do something great, all right? Put something in your children and just make your life great. Let me tell you, you only get today, so squeeze all the juice out of today. Love the people around you, and guess what? Have fun in everything that you do. Life isn't that serious because all of us not going to get out of here alive. We all going to die. So you might as well enjoy yourself while you have the opportunity right now. Thank you very much. That was it. I had to sneak a sermon in there.
See, you've done this before once or twice.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. You can look me up on social media. Email me or call me. Matt has all my information, and you can give him all the information, Matt. I'll be happy to answer. I'm only going to be here 9 more months, and then I'm going to be playing golf and chasing my wife around the house. That's it. I hope she's not on. I'm sorry, honey.
Well, I don't know. Well, we've got this for posterity, but I'm sure you'll know how to finesse it going forward. Deputy Owens, can't thank you enough. This was an amazing discussion. So much great information and the perspective that we really need during a challenging time for everyone. But you give everybody hope and kind of let them see the path forward. And very honored to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, guys. All right, guys. The comeback show is over. Everybody have a fantastic evening. Deputy Owens, thank you once again.
All right, bless you.
Take care. That was great. Feels good to be back. Everybody, thank you for participating. I know that it was a little difficult. I saw some questions, not all that I was able to direct. But yeah, I'll probably come up with a better system for ingesting questions. But thank you. Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to be I can't wait to get church. I can't wait for the ride along. Can't wait to get down to church. I'm multi-denominational here. So once again, everybody, thank you so much. I'll see you soon.